Hi guys, and welcome back to another IBRACORP video. Welcome back to another week here at IBRACORP. Glad to have you. If you haven't already and you enjoy our work, please remember to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you'd like to be notified when new videos go up. We've also got our website where you can subscribe and help support us if you so choose. Today, we're going to be looking at Pterodactyl. This is one that's been requested quite a bit and we've been putting it off for a while. The reason why we had to put it off was because if you were to do this in a VM, it was pretty straightforward, but to get working with some containers and using Docker took a little bit more time for us to develop our documentation. We have Pterodactyl working in Docker and it's ready to go. So what is Pterodactyl? Here we're on their website, pterodactyl.io, and you can see that Pterodactyl is an open source game server management panel. It's built with PHP, React, and Go, and it does look really nice once you've spun one up. It's very easy to use, very fluid sort of interface. I really like it. And it runs all game servers in isolated Docker containers while exposing a beautiful and intuitive UI to end users. Further down on their page, they've got some other features here that you might want to take note of. So they're very strong on security, trying to keep with modern tools. It's Docker all the way, which always is a plus because Docker is just so easy to manage. It's free and open source, 100%, which we are big advocates of here at IBRACORP as usual. User-friendly and scalable. Now, one note I will make here where it says user-friendly. It's user-friendly in the sense that the interface makes sense. In terms of setting it up, I will have to preface this video with, look, I would say this is for medium to advanced users. If you're a complete beginner, you might have some trouble. Even though we are providing the video and written documentation here at IBRACORP to help you, you might find that you get stuck in certain places and it might be hard to find help for that specific issue. So unless you're prepared to take that on and try and figure out the problem yourself, it's probably best maybe you give it a miss for now, or just give it a try and see how you go. You've got nothing to lose. But just letting you know that it can get a little bit advanced if you so choose. If we just go through their screenshots, that's an example of how it could look there for you. You know, here's a perfect example of what the console looks like for a game server that you've got running, so you can use the inbuilt console there to run commands. You've got your CPU usage, memory usage, all that sort of stuff. You can deploy stuff with one click of a button if you so choose as well, once you've got things configured that is, and you understand what the fields are. So I suppose some of the questions you guys might have is, well, what makes this different to something like Crafty Controller, for example, which we covered in a previous video? And basically, Pterodactyl is designed to be for large-scale deployments of game servers and make them easy. So, you know, large companies who want to host game servers, you would use something like Pterodactyl because it's not specifically just for Minecraft. You can run all sorts of other game servers, some that already have pre-built templates and others that you just have to figure out yourself, and it provides you that interface to do it. You've got things like Rust, Armor, Minecraft, just to name a few, and there's plenty more I think that you can find if you put your mind to it. Now, of course, they've got their own documentation and Discord, so I'll always shout out the connection there for you as well. So if you wanted to join their Discord and their documentation, feel free to do so. Here's their website, pterodactyl.io. Alternatively, you're welcome to join our Discord as well, where we always have discussions and help around our videos, as well as just general chatter, and it's a nice welcoming community. So if you're interested in Pterodactyl, you think it sounds pretty cool, you want to get some game servers up and running, you're sick of having to do things manually and you want a nice interface to do it, then this is the video for you. So let's get stuck into it. So guys, as usual, our documentation will be ready with the video once that goes live. It's currently in a draft stage as we work on things in the background, and then we release it after the fact. Now, so I'm pretty much going to be following our documentation because a lot of work has gone into this. So thank you, Hawks, for your effort put into this to make this happen. A lot of people from the community have requested this video, so we hope you guys really enjoy it. So here we are in Unraid, and we are going to get started into the install. So Pterodactyl is split into two containers. One is for the panel, and that's where everything is controlled. The other is the Daemon, where the actual containers are created and maintained. So first, we're going to set up a few things before we get into the actual installation. The first thing I suggest we do is head over to your shares. Now we're going to create a new share, We're going to call that share pterodactyl-node, and we're going to just give the description of pterodactyl files. Now, this spelling can get a little bit tricky, so make sure you try and read the spelling as you're going through. For the cache, we're going to set that to prefer. We want stuff to run off the cache pool. If we don't, it's going to be doing a lot of read and writes to your array, which is definitely not recommended. So having it on the cache, which is typically for most people is an SSD, is going to be a lot better for you, a lot more reliable and a lot faster. You can leave the allocation method as it is unless you want to change it. Now typically I will set a minimum free space to something like 50 gig. That's just my opinion. If you want to change it, that's fine. But that basically means if there's less than 50 gigs space left, that's when it will start writing to things like the array and not filling it up to the brim. Split level is perfectly fine as it is. All the rest is fine. So once you're done, click add share. So we've set that to secure, and in the field underneath there, I've actually picked myself as the user who has access to make read and write changes. So make sure you do that as well. Now you can pick secure or private. I prefer private. That just means guests have zero access. So it's completely authenticated access only. And then that's done. So the next thing we need to do is create a database. Now, if you don't know how to do that, I've already done a video on MariaDB and how to create databases with AdMiner. It's a very easy way to do it because it gives you a nice user interface. I love things with user interface. It makes it noob friendly, makes it easy for people to follow. So if you haven't watched that video, go watch that video. Otherwise, I'm gonna breeze through it right now without touching too much on it because we've already done that. So as you can see, we're logged into AdMiner here. We can see our Pterodactyl database that we've created. Click on that. It's currently empty, which is fine. And if we go to privileges, then we've got our user that we've created and their privileges, which is all privileges basically. So like I said, if you don't know how to do that, please watch our MariaDB video that will cover how to create a database and a user. So with that done, we now have a database ready to go and ready to be used. Now, the next thing we're doing here, because we want to set everything up so it's a nice smooth install, is creating our subdomain. Now, if you are planning to use this with your friends, then you want to subdomain this so that you can get access to it without having to remember an IP address. So to do this, get into your reverse proxy of choice. Where again, we're using Nginx Proxy Manager here, but you'll do the same for whichever you're planning to use. And here we've got it created. So panel.ibracorp.io, we've got our HTTP scheme, our IP address of our server, and the port of 8001. Now, 8001 might change if that's already taken on your machine when we get to the Pterodactyl panel installation, and you might have to change it. In that case, come back and change it here. In the SSL tab, make sure you've picked the correct origin certificate. If you don't know how to do that, we have covered that in our Cloudflare video. Make sure you watch that to understand how origin certificates work. I always recommend an origin certificate instead of the Let's Encrypt ones because A, lasts 15 years, and B, they come from Cloudflare, so then that way you've got everything under one roof, so to speak. So once you've created one for panel.ibracorp.io, we'll click save. So then underneath our Cloudflare DNS, we're going to create one called panel and targeting it at our IBRACORP website. So again, you want to make sure that you're following our Cloudflare video where all this is explained and how it works. Now, repeat the same step for another domain, another subdomain called node. So for example, I'll show you here. We've got one here, so node.ibracorp.io, pointing to our IP, pointing to our server address, and we've got our certificate there. Now, if you don't have HSTS enabled in Cloudflare, you do not need to enable these, so you can leave those off, otherwise enable them. Then to do the same thing, back here in your Cloudflare DNS, we want another one here called node. So as you can see, we've got node@ibracorp.io right there. So with that foundation set up, we can now start installing Pterodactyl. So let's head over to the App Store and just look up Pterodactyl panel or Pterodactyl, and you'll see we've got our repository up here for you. We've also got A75G's one here as well, nothing wrong with that. We're just following ours because our documentation matches the template. So the first thing we're going to install is the panel. In here, we're going to set the network type to IBRACORP. We also made a video on how to create custom Docker networks, so be sure to check that out if you're not sure about that one. For the port, as the default is 8001, so if that's free, leave it as is. If it's not, change it to something that's free, but remember that you'll have to go update your Nginx proxy port as well. Now, shared data, as you can see, it's actually pointing to our share that we created. So if I go back here, here's our different shares, and here's our one that we created. So Pterodactyl node, then /data. So if you renamed your share to something else, make sure you update that, of course. to what matches. The rest of it, of course, is fine as well. App data is pointing to Pterodactyl. The time zone, you probably want that to match what is legitimate. So in our case, Australia, Melbourne. Now your database, host, and IP. So if we're using custom Docker networks, I can refer to them with the container name. So in our case, MariaDB is the name of my container, so I can just leave it as that. The alternative is you can type the IP address of the server that it's on, and then the ports down here. Database name, database username, and database password. So I'm going to put my database password once I'm done on the screen. Debug, we've got nothing there, that's fine. Nothing else there. So put the password in for your database, as long as this stuff matches as well, and then we'll click apply. So after that's done, we've pretty much got the container running. Now, what we want to do is create our first admin user. So there's a command in our documentation for you to copy. And if we just open up the terminal here in Unraid, and we paste the command in, hit enter, starts running you through a couple of things. So is this user administrator? We're going to say yes. Email address, I'm going to say is our admin one. The username, I'll just call him admin. First name, last name, and then the password. So there we go. We've created our user. He's an admin and all the details required as well. Then we can close the terminal and that part is done. So now if we left click and we go to web UI, we're faced with the login for Pterodactyl. So in here, we'll actually sign in with our admin account and password and click login. Beautiful, that logged us in fine. We know our user works and there's no issues there. So now we need to prep some stuff in the panel. So in the panel, go to the settings icon. I'm gonna go to locations. Under locations, click create new and give it a short code. You can call it whatever you want. Now in our documentation, it's just called home, for example. So we can do the same thing. Otherwise, if you were to have multiple servers, say around the globe, you would give it something like this, you know, where it's in Australia, it's in Melbourne, name of the server. All right, so in my case, I'm just gonna leave it as that and then click create. That's done, we can click save. And the next thing is we need to create a node. So head over to nodes, create new. For the name, I'm gonna give it this name here as well, same identifier as our location, but you don't have to do that. For our memory, in the documentation, we've got 16 gig as the allocation. Now, I will note, guys, some games will use a lot of RAM or use a lot of memory. So in our case, we're going to give 16384, which is 16 gig in binary, and that should be fine. We're going to memory over allocation to 0. What we need to do is update this top field here. So MNT, we want it to match what's in our documentation because that's going to be mapping to our share that we've created. Total disk space, we'll say 100 gig. The Daemon port, we're going to change that to 443. Make sure our location is set to the location we created earlier. Visibility is going to be public. Now the fully qualified domain name is going to be the one that we've created at the start of the video. So in our case, it was called node.ibracorp.io. And we're going to say we're behind a reverse proxy. Now, because we're behind a reverse proxy, we are using SSL connection. That's fine, we would use SSL. If you weren't going to use subdomains or certificates, then you could use HTTP and then use an IP address instead. So with that stuff done, we should be able to click create node. And we've got our first error, which I'm sure you guys are going to find as you start to mess around with it a little bit. So it says that memory must be a number. So I've just taken the comma out of there. So we might have to update our screenshots on the docs. And then the disk over allocate field is required. So I just put a 0 there as well. Click create node. And sure enough, there you go. Our node has been created. So after you create it, it then takes you to the allocations page. So in the allocations page, we're just going to put the IP address of our server. And for the ports we want, we're going to allocate these ports. So keep in mind, once you allocate them to this node, then you can't use those ports again in another node. So just make sure you're allocating them uniquely. So once we're happy with that, we click submit. And there you go. All of our ports and IP addresses have now been allocated. While we're in here, head over to the configuration tab. In this tab, you will find the configuration file. So this is what it's going to use to try and start things up. So what I suggest you do is open up something like Notepad++ and paste that content in here. So copy it from here and paste it into Notepad++. In here, we need to make just a couple of changes. So where it says port 8080, if you have 443 here, change that to 8080. Then under the remote address, just add an S so that we can make sure we're hitting the SSL address, not the HTTP address. Then we can save it and call it config.yml. And in Notepad++, we can actually pick YML as the format. So once that's done, click save. That's saved, everything is good. We can then close this. Navigate to your share that we've created on your server, the Pterodactyl node one. And in here, we're just gonna paste that folder, that file that we've just created into the root location. So just here, config and then data, right underneath Pterodactyl node. Now that's how I like to do it, but in the documentation, we've also explained how to do it through the terminal of Unraid so that you can just use command line and it makes it a little bit quicker, I think. But as they say, old habits die hard. So now we've prepped everything for our node container. So all this is ready. So we need to go back to Unraid now. Head back to the App Store and now we want to install the Pterodactyl Daemon. So in here, click to install. For the network type, again, we want to keep it on the same network. So we're going to set it to IBRA proxy. Everything else here should be the same. We've got it mapping to our share that we've created. We've got our TMP file there, that's fine. And we've got Pterodactyl node there as well. The port is 8181. Now, if that does not suit your setup, I would recommend changing it. So for example, in my case, Tortuli actually runs on 8181. So what I did was change that to 8002, and that's what's in my Nginx proxy manager config as well. So with that all done, we can then click apply. So head back to the Docker tab. I'm just going to show you guys something real quick. Now, if you haven't seen our Docker folders video, I recommend you do it because what's going to happen here is, as you can see, we've got our 2 Pterodactyl containers. However, every time we launch a game server, it actually launches a container on Unraid. So what's going to happen is you're going to start seeing containers with weird long strings as names come up. And those are the game containers actually running in Pterodactyl. So something like Docker folders will make it a lot easier for you to manage by having them underneath a folder. So in here, I'm just going to go ahead and add our Pterodactyl there. Pterodactyl and this one. That one was deleted. Click submit. And there you go. It's put it into that folder for us, which is just a little bit easier to read. All right, guys. So in the config file, the other thing we need to update, which I obviously overlooked, is we want it to be pointing to our panel URL. So panel.ibracorp.io. That way it's got HTTPS panel and that's the address we're going to access it from. So click save. We've got that. We've got the port as 8080. We've got the HTTPS and the panel address. Then we're going to restart the Daemon container again. And at this point, you should be accessing your panel from panel.domain.com. Okay guys, so we've finally got it figured out and we've got the nice green heart icon here. Just to show you the mistake that I made and what it was, is down here in the remote entry, I didn't have an apostrophe on the end. So I did that, restarted, and now you can see the container, the config file looks a lot longer and it's automatically put a lot of information in here. And we're getting the green heart icon, so we know that it's now picked up the node and it's successfully connected. So make sure you're really following the documentation step by step because those small things can really throw you off otherwise. So guys, there's one extra step in the config file that we also need to make sure we update. So as you can see, make sure your time zone is still up to date and is correct. If not, change it. The other thing is some of the directories that we need to change. So for a couple of these, you'll notice that they would have been changed. For the root directory, we don't want it going here. We want it going to our share. Log directory is fine. The data directory, we'll change it to this. Archives to go here and backups to go here. So with those changes, we'll make sure that things are saved in the correct location. So then go ahead and click save. We'll then restart our Daemon container, let it pick up those changes, and we can see our node is still back up and running and working fine. So now we can create our server. So go ahead and click create new under server, click admin, IBRACORP. We'll leave the CPU limit as open. And for the memory, we're going to give it 8 gig. Now, I do know after testing that the new Minecraft does use up quite a bit of RAM. So I'm going to give it 8 gig, which I think is plenty. And then we'll also allocate 10 gig of space. Let's go down a little further and then we can pick our Nest configuration. So Nest is going to be Minecraft. As you can see, you've got some other ones here too. The egg, so the type of Minecraft, we'll go with paper. The Docker image that we want to pick, so we're going to go with the 16 one. And then you'll see that all of this here is automatically generated depending on what you select at this in these fields here. So if you don't know what you're doing, don't touch anything here. It's automatically done for you. As you can see, you've set it all up, then it's fine. If you change anything there, you kind of risk having a bit of an issue. So just so you guys understand, node is like a hardware resource. Then you've got the server, which is the game server. And then you're allocating what node you want to use for that server. All right, and we've created just the one, so we've only got one to pick from anyway. So if you're happy with all that, then you can go ahead and click Create Server. Then it takes you to this page. So if we go back to our main page by clicking the name here, there's our server. Click on that again, and you'll see there's a nice little interface here for you to manage it. So before you can play a Minecraft server, you have to agree to the EULA file, basically accepting their terms and conditions. Now, Pterodactyl makes this really easy. So basically what we can do is click Start. As you can see, it starts pulling down all the information it needs, the container it needs, all that stuff for us. Bang, we start getting this dialog box. Click Accept, and it will automatically update the text file to show that you've accepted the EULA agreement. Don't need to do anything manually, it's all done for us. Pretty much most of this video is getting the nitty-gritty of working out how things work together, then setting up the foundation. Once you've got the foundation set up, it's easy as pie. You basically just say, oh, I want a new game server, click a few buttons, create the template, and away we go. So the next part of this really is whether you want remote access to the game server. Now that's something we've already covered in our Minecraft Crafty guide, which both has video and the written guide. So I suggest you follow that in terms of setting up your Cloudflare and all those sort of details to have remote access. I think it's just a waste of time repeating it again, but it's in that video for you if you're interested. Now, there is another thing you can do as well with Pterodactyl is editing the game server file. So if we go to File Manager here, here's all of our files that we have for our server. So if you have anything you wanted to add, you could just add it here, for example. And you can just click on a file. So let's say this paper.yml, and we can edit it right here. So it makes it really easy to maintain stuff as you're going along in the one interface. How easy is that? So let's say, for example, if we click on bucket.yml, and here we've got the settings for the server, we can say monsters, spawn limits, I want it to be 90 instead of 70. Go ahead and click Save. Done. We restart the server, it will now pick up those new settings. Now how easy is that, guys? You can also run commands. So if I was to go OP Psychotics, for example, it's made me a server operator. So you can run commands in here too to help manage your players. And there you go, that's pretty much done, guys. Welcome to Pterodactyl. You've started your first Minecraft server from Pterodactyl's interface. I hope you really enjoyed that. It was a lot of work and it is very finicky, so please make sure you follow the documentation step by step. I just learned the hard way because I skipped something that I didn't notice, and sure enough, it wasted a lot of my time recording this for you today. I'll show you one last thing. If we go back to Unraid here and I just refresh the page, this is what I was talking about earlier. So you can see it's created a container and a custom Docker network by itself. It does that by itself because that's just how it works. So if that gets annoying, because as you can see, it doesn't really look that appealing, we've got our Docker folder. So if I go to Docker folder and then I just check that there, it just moves it into the game servers folder, and I can just keep it sort of organized. We don't really need to worry about this auto start because Pterodactyl is what's going to manage it for us. And from there, you're pretty much done. Feel free to have a bit of a play in your Pterodactyl instance and see how it works for you. See what you can and can't do. I think it's pretty impressive. It's really easy to use in terms of its layout, really clean, really responsive. So a big shout out to the Pterodactyl team. Thanks for making this awesome software. And thank you to our community who suggested to make a video on it. They've been very keen to see it. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Please remember to like and subscribe to the video. We really appreciate having you with us. Chuck us a comment down below on what you think about Pterodactyl. And we'll see you in the next IBRACORP video.